The jungle world of Velan was feared even by hardened warriors. Every creature was armed with fangs, venom, or claws sharper than steel. Explorers said only fools or the desperate entered its forests. Yet the human named Kale walked there, calm and steady, his eyes searching the shadows. He did not carry heavy weapons, only a simple blade strapped across his back. The air was heavy with mist, and strange cries echoed from deep inside the trees. Branches twisted above like black veins, and glowing plants lit the forest floor. Kale could feel eyes watching him, not one pair, but many. Valen's beasts never hunted alone, and stories claimed entire patrols vanished in minutes. He knew the danger, but he walked anyway, each step louder than the silence around him. Then came the roar. It was not the sound of a single predator, but a chorus that froze blood. From the shadows leapt a creature taller than any man. Its fur bristled with dark spikes, its mouth dripped glowing green venom, and its eyes burned with fire. This was the venomous beast known as the Night Fang, a terror even among predators. Soldiers who had faced armies whispered that no weapon could stop it. Yet here it was, crouched before Kale, ready to strike. But Kale was not the first target. Ahead of him, bound in chains of black steel, knelt a young alien woman. Her ears tapered to sharp points, her long black hair tangled over her shoulders, and her clothes were torn from battle. She was beautiful but fierce, her gaze steady even as the Night Fang's fangs hovered inches from her throat. Around her lay the broken bodies of warriors who had tried to stand in her defense. She was their princess, captured and displayed as bait for the beast. The Night Fang's growl shook the trees, its venom sizzling as it dripped onto the soil. The alien princess did not beg, nor did she scream. She stared at the beast with defiance, though her body trembled. Then, the monster lunged forward, claws raised to end her life. It never struck. Kyle's voice cut through the air like steel through silk. He did not shout. He did not curse. He whispered one word, a word in no language known to the galaxy. The sound was soft, almost lost in the wind, yet the Night Fang froze mid-strike. Its burning eyes turned away from the princess and locked on. Kale. Venom still dripped from its fangs, but its muscles relaxed. It lowered its head like a trained hound before a master. The princess gasped, her eyes wide with disbelief. She had seen entire armies scatter before the Night Fang's rage, but here was a human, unarmored and alone, taming it with a single breath. Her mind raced. Who was this man? How could one human hold the leash to such terror? Kale stepped closer, his movement slow and calm. The beast obeyed, shifting aside to give him passage. He approached the princess, his hand brushing the chains that bound her. The steel cracked like dry wood under his touch, and the chains fell away. She staggered free, staring between him and the beast that still crouched in silence. Behind them, the forest stirred again. More shadows moved between the trees, more eyes burning in the mist. The Night Fang was not alone, and now both human and alien knew the truth. The war on Velan was only beginning, and they stood in the center of it. The forest of Velan did not forgive weakness. As soon as the Night Fang lowered its head to Kyle, the shadows around them shifted. More shapes appeared between the twisted trees, glowing eyes glinting in the mist. Each one was another predator, drawn by the scent of venom and blood. The alien princess tightened her fists, preparing to fight again even though her strength was fading. Kyle did not raise his blade. Instead, he placed one hand on the neck of the Night Fang that had just spared her life. The beast growled softly but did not resist. Its massive body stood like a barrier between them and the others that now surrounded the clearing. The alien princess could not believe what she was seeing. A human, alone and fragile compared to her own kind, was standing unharmed beside a monster that had ended thousands. The pack of predators circled closer, their fangs glowing with the same strange green venom. They hissed and snapped, trying to test the Night Fang's loyalty. The air grew tense, thick with the promise of death. Then Kale whispered again. The sound was low, a murmur so faint it almost vanished into the mist. But the Night Fang heard. It roared, a terrible sound that shook the trees and the others froze. None dared to move closer. For the first time in centuries, the hunters of Velan bowed their heads. The princess stared at Kale, her lips parting in shock. "What are you?" she asked, her voice rough from exhaustion. She did not expect an answer, but Kale turned to her with calm eyes. "Someone who walks where others will not," he said. It was not an explanation, but it was enough to silence her for now. The predators melted back into the shadows, their glowing eyes disappearing one by one. Soon the clearing was quiet again, except for the heavy breathing of the night fang at Kale's side. The princess pulled herself up, still unsteady after the chains. She wanted to demand answers, but her instincts told her something more urgent was coming. Velan was never still for long. Kale studied her carefully. She was taller than him, her figure marked by the strength of her warrior race, but her eyes betrayed both pride and fatigue. "You should not be here," he said. She narrowed her eyes at him. "This is my world," she replied, "and those creatures are my people's curse. But now I see, they are not yours." Before Kale could respond, the sound of metal clashing echoed through the trees. It was not an animal's cry this time. It was soldiers. Armored figures marched into the clearing carrying weapons that gleamed in the forest light. Their leader's voice rang out cold and sharp. "Seize them both, the beast and the human." The princess stiffened. She recognized the crest on their armor. These were not rescuers. They were the very ones who had chained her as bait. She stepped back, her fists clenched, ready to fight even without a weapon. But Kyle raised his hand, and the night fang growled low. The soldiers hesitated. Their weapons were strong, but none of them wanted to face the beast that had destroyed entire warbands. Kyle's calm stare unsettled them further. They were used to prey running, not standing still with a predator at their side. "Leave," Kyle said simply. His voice carried no anger, only certainty. The soldiers shifted uneasily. Some lowered their weapons, but the commander snarled, "This world does not belong to you, human. You will die here like the rest." At his signal, bolts of energy fired through the air. The forest lit with flashes, and the ground shook with power. The night fang roared and lunged forward, its massive body shielding Kyle and the princess. The Battle of Velan had begun, and for the first time, the human was no longer just a wanderer. He was a force that both beast and warrior could not ignore. The clearing erupted with chaos. Energy bolts cracked through the air, searing the mist into flashes of blue and white. The night fang met the first wave with a roar that shook the ground. Its claws tore through armor like it was paper, and soldiers scattered in panic. Those who dared to fire again found themselves crushed under its massive weight, or hurled into the trees with bone-snapping force. The princess moved quickly, her instincts as a warrior taking control. She snatched a fallen spear from the ground and spun it in her hands. Despite her exhaustion, her strikes were precise. Each thrust found a weakness in the soldier's armor. For every one that fell to the beast, another fell to her. Even chained and weakened moments before, she now fought with the fury of her people's bloodline. Kyle remained calm, his eyes never leaving the commander. The man stood back, barking orders but keeping his distance. Kyle stepped forward, his hand brushing the simple blade at his back. The commander sneered when he saw it. Compared to the soldiers' energy rifles and plasma blades, Kyle's weapon looked almost primitive, but the human did not hesitate. He drew the blade, and its edge caught the strange light of the forest. The commander lifted his own sword, one forged of alien steel that burned with a red glow. He rushed forward, expecting the human to falter. Instead, Kale's blade moved with a speed that blurred. The clash rang out across the trees, a sharp cry of metal against metal. Sparks lit the air, and for a moment even the soldiers paused, drawn by the sight. The princess watched as Kale fought. His movements were unlike any style she knew. He did not rely on strength alone, nor did he follow the rigid forms of trained warriors. Each strike flowed into the next as if he had been born for this fight. The commander pressed hard, his strength overwhelming. Yet Kale met every blow with calm precision. His eyes remained steady, his breath even, as though this battle was nothing more than a test. The Night Fang tore through the last of the soldiers, its venom dripping in rivers that hissed against the ground. The survivors fled into the mist, their cries fading as they abandoned their commander. The princess lowered her spear but did not intervene. She knew the outcome was already decided. The commander roared in anger and swung his blade with both hands, aiming to cut Kyle down in one final strike. Kale whispered again, the same low sound he had used with the beast. The Night Fang paused mid-charge, as if frozen by the word, and the commander faltered for just a breath. That was enough. Kale's blade moved in a single swift arc, striking across the alien steel. The red glow shattered and the commander fell to his knees, his weapon broken in two. Silence spread over the clearing. The commander gasped in disbelief, clutching the broken pieces of his blade. His voice trembled. "What are you?" But Kyle gave no answer. He simply lowered his sword, his eyes unreadable. The princess stepped closer, her gaze shifting from the defeated commander to the human who had brought down both beast and warrior. She felt a storm of questions inside her, but none reached her lips. For the first time in her life, she felt both fear and awe towards someone not of her kind. "Thiru?" Commander crawled backward, desperate to escape. Kale let him go. "Tell your masters," he said finally. "Tell them this world is not theirs to claim." His words echoed in the mist, carried by the silence of the forest. The commander stumbled away, vanishing into the shadows, leaving only the three of them in the clearing. The princess lowered her spear and faced Kale. "You saved me," she said softly. "But you have also marked yourself. They will not forgive this." Kyle looked at her, then at the Night Fang, which now rested calmly at his side. "Then let them come," he said. "This world has chosen its guardians." The forest was still after the battle, yet the silence did not bring peace. The air carried the smell of venom and blood, and the mist seemed heavier, as if the land itself mourned. The princess stood tall, but inside her chest her heart raced. She had seen bravery before, but never like this. A stranger had spoken a single word and bent both beast and fate. Kale sheathed his simple blade and looked at the Night Fang. The beast lowered itself beside him, breathing heavy but calm. Its glowing fangs dripped harmlessly now, and its burning eyes seemed almost gentle. The princess had heard countless tales of these monsters, but none spoke of them obeying anyone. To see it now was to witness a story that should not exist. She studied Kale as he walked toward her. His steps were steady, his presence unshaken by the battle. He was not covered in armor, nor marked with the symbols of a great house. He carried no crown, no banner, no sign of rank, yet he stood as if the forest itself bowed before him. "You should leave this world," she said finally, though her voice lacked strength. "My people's enemies will hunt you now. No one survives when they carry the wrath of empires." Kyle met her gaze, calm as always. "If survival is all I sought, I would not have come here," he replied. "But I did not come to flee. I came to face what others run from." The princess frowned, uncertain whether his words were wisdom or madness. Still, she could not deny that he had saved her life. She lifted her chin, pride returning to her posture. "My name is Lyra," she said. "I am heir to the house of Velan, and you, human, have placed yourself within my fate whether you wished it or not." Kale nodded once, as if her declaration meant little, but also everything. He did not bow, yet he did not dismiss her. The Night Fang shifted, rising again to its full height. Lyra felt its shadow fall across her, yet it no longer threatened her. Instead, it seemed bound to the human at her side. Suddenly the ground shook beneath them. Not from marching soldiers this time, but from something deeper. The forest groaned, and distant cries echoed from beyond the hills. Lyra's eyes widened. "They are moving the beasts," she whispered. "My captors meant not only to chain me, but to awaken the entire brood." Kale glanced toward the horizon, where green lights pulsed against the mist. "Then we cannot remain here," he said. He placed his hand gently against the Night Fang's shoulder, and the creature growled low in answer. "It will lead us," he continued. "The forest knows its own paths." They began to move, Lyra walking beside him, though her legs trembled from exhaustion. She tried not to show weakness, but Kale noticed. Without a word, he slowed his pace to match hers. She hated the feeling of being protected, yet she could not deny the comfort of his steady presence. As they traveled deeper, Lyra spoke again. "You did not answer me before. What are you?" Kale looked forward into the mist. "A man who has lost much," he said simply, "and who will not allow more to be taken." Lyra wanted to ask more, but his tone ended the conversation. One studied him in silence, realizing that every word he spoke carried weight. This was not a wanderer without purpose. He was a storm held within flesh. The forest opened to a ridge overlooking the valley. Below, hundreds of beasts moved like shadows across the land, their glowing fangs forming rivers of green light. At their center stood massive cages of steel, powered by alien machines that hummed with cruel purpose. Lyra's fists clenched. "They are building an army of predators," she said. Kale's eyes narrowed. "Then we will break their chains." The Night Fang growled at his side, as if agreeing. Lyra felt a shiver run through her. For the first time, she believed his madness might be the only hope they had. The valley below was alive with danger. Hundreds of venomous beasts paced within steel cages, their glowing fangs flashing each time they struck the bars. Energy fields sparked as the creatures tested their prisons, shaking the ground with their fury. Soldiers moved between the cages, shouting orders and forcing the monsters into obedience with cruel devices. Lyra clenched her jaw. She had seen her enemies use war machines, but this was worse. They were enslaving nature itself, bending predators into weapons. Her people had lived in fear of the Night Fangs for generations, yet these invaders dared to treat them as tools. She turned to Kale, her voice filled with disbelief. "They are not just building an army. They are turning Velon into a weapon to use against the galaxy." Kale watched silently. His eyes moved from the cages to the soldiers, then back to the glowing valley. The Night Fang beside him growled, its body tense with rage. The beast wanted to charge down and rip the chains apart, but Kale placed a hand on its shoulder. It stilled, as if even its fury bent to his calm. "We must strike carefully," Kyle said at last. "If we release them without control, the beasts will slaughter everything, even us." Lyra hated the truth of his words. She wanted nothing more than to see the soldiers torn apart, but she knew her people would be next if the beasts broke free without guidance. She glanced at Kale, still, uncertain how a single human had tamed one Night Fang. "Can you control more?" she asked. Kale did not answer immediately. He looked at the Night Fang at his side, then at the valley full of caged monsters. Finally, he nodded. "If they hear the same voice, perhaps they will follow. But it will not be easy." Lyra touched her chest where the chains had cut her skin. "If you can do this, you will not only save me, you will save my world." Kyle did not reply with grand words. He simply began walking down the ridge, the Night Fang moving with him. Lyra followed, her spear tight in her grip. They crept through the mist, using the shadows of twisted trees to hide their approach. The soldiers were loud, confident in their numbers and their machines. They did not expect anyone to walk willingly into the heart of their camp. That arrogance would cost them. The first guard fell before he could raise an alarm, his weapon clattering to the ground as Lyra's spear pierced his chest. Kyle moved past her strike with swift steps, his blade cutting through the next soldier, in silence. They moved as if guided by one thought, clearing a path through the edge of the camp. Then the Night Fang roared. The sound carried across the valley like thunder, and the caged beasts answered. Hundreds of glowing eyes turned toward them. The soldiers panicked, shouting orders and rushing to strengthen the energy fields. Kyle stepped forward, his voice low. He whispered the same word he had spoken before, a sound that seemed to cut through every barrier. The Night Fang beside him bowed its head, and across the valley, the other beasts froze. Their claws scraped against the steel, but they no longer. Struck in wild rage, they listened. The soldiers looked around in confusion as the monsters calmed. "What is happening?" one shouted. But before they could act, Kale whispered again. The sound was soft, yet it carried to every corner of the valley. The cages shook as the beasts responded, slamming against their prisons with renewed power. Sparks burst as the energy fields failed one by one. Lyra's eyes widened as the first cage burst open. A night fang larger than the rest leapt free, its roar shaking the sky. Instead of attacking Kale, it lowered its head toward him. One by one, more cages fell and more beasts emerged. The soldiers fired desperately, but their weapons could not stop the tide. The valley became a storm of venom and fury. Yet through it all, the monsters did not attack Kale or Lyra. They turned their rage on the soldiers, tearing apart the machines that had bound them. For the first time, Lyra understood. This human was not just a wanderer or a warrior. He was something more. The beasts of her world obeyed him, and the armies of her enemies would soon know the price of their arrogance. The valley was unrecognizable. Where cages once stood, only twisted steel and broken machines remained. The venomous beasts roamed free, their glowing fangs lighting the mist with eerie green fire. Soldiers had been scattered like leaves in a storm, their weapons torn from their hands, their voices lost in screams. Kale stood at the center of the chaos, calm as the predators prowled around him. Each beast glanced his way but never attacked. Some lowered their heads as they passed, as if he carried the unseen crown of a master they had always known. Lyra could not believe her eyes. Her people had fought these monsters for centuries, losing countless warriors to their fangs, yet here they were, kneeling to a single human. She tightened her grip on her spear and whispered under her breath, "How is this possible?" Kale did not answer her. He raised his hand, and the night fang beside him growled softly. The other beasts followed its signal, spreading out across the valley. They did not hunt Lyra. They hunted the last pockets of soldiers who still clung to their machines. The screams of the invaders faded into silence, and soon the only sounds left were the hissing of venom dripping onto the ground and the heavy breaths of the predators. Kyle lowered his hand, and the monsters stopped as if they had heard a final command. Lyra walked closer to him, her eyes searching his face for answers. "You do not just control them," she said. "You belong to them. They follow you as if you were their blood." Kyle looked at her quietly. "I speak to them," he replied, "and they choose to listen." Lyra shook her head. "No one chooses to listen to beasts like these. They only know rage." She paused, then added softly, "Unless you are something more than human." Kale said nothing. His silence only deepened her unease. Before she could press further, the ground shook beneath them again. This time it was not from cages breaking, or beasts charging. It was deeper, heavier, as if the land itself was moving. The predators turned their glowing eyes toward the mountains in the distance. Low rumbles echoed, growing louder with each passing second. Lyra's face drained of color. "No," she whispered. "They have awakened it." Kyle narrowed his eyes. "What is it?" Her voice trembled, though she tried to steady it. "The brood mother, the first night fang, the one from which all others are born. My people sealed it away long ago, for it could not be killed. The invaders must have broken the seal to bind the rest." Kale looked at the valley full of beasts. Even they seemed restless, their growls uncertain as the rumbling grew louder. The ground split, cracks glowing with strange green light. Then the mountain itself shattered. From the dust rose a creature larger than anything Kale had ever seen. Its body towered above the trees, its fangs glowing like rivers of fire, its roar shaking the sky until even stars seemed to tremble. The brood mother of the night fangs had returned. The freed predators that had obeyed Kale lowered themselves to the ground, bowing as if to a queen. Lyra gripped her spear, fear flashing in her eyes. "If you cannot control it, then all is lost." Kale stepped forward, his expression unreadable. The brood mother's eyes locked on him, glowing brighter with every breath. Soldiers, beasts, and even Lyra seemed to vanish from his attention. Only the towering monster remained before him. For a moment, the world held its breath. The broodmother roared, a sound so powerful that trees cracked and rocks shattered. Venom rained from its jaws, burning the earth where it fell. Kale whispered once more. The sound was softer than the roar, but the broodmother froze. Its eyes narrowed, its massive body trembling as though fighting a force unseen. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. Could even this creature bend to the human's will? The broodmother lowered its head slightly, not in full submission but in recognition. Kale stood tall, his voice steady as he whispered again. The impossible was no longer just a rumor or a tale. It was happening before her eyes. Lyra gripped her spear tighter. She did not know if Kale had saved them or doomed them all. The broodmother loomed over the valley like a mountain come alive. Its glowing fangs dripped rivers of venom that hissed and burned the earth wherever they touched. The freed beasts lay low before it, growling with uneasy reverence. Even the night fang that stood beside Kale bowed its head, as though acknowledging the one that birthed them all. Lyra's chest tightened with fear. She had seen many battles, but nothing compared to this. Her people had whispered of the broodmother in fearful legends, warning their children that it was death itself. Now it stood before her alive and furious. She whispered to herself, barely daring to breathe. No one can stand against it. But Kale did not waver. He stepped forward, his gaze locked on the monstrous creature. His voice was low, a whisper that carried through the mist. The broodmother's massive head lowered a fraction, its burning eyes narrowing as if it were listening. The impossible had happened again, yet this time its body trembled with resistance. Lyra felt the tension in the air. You are holding it, but only just, she warned. If it breaks free of your voice, it will tear this world apart. Kyle said nothing. His lips moved in steady rhythm, each whisper like a chain binding the creature's rage. The broodmother snarled, venom splashing dangerously close, but it did not strike. For now, it held. Then a new sound pierced the chaos. A ship's engines roared overhead, its black hull cutting through the clouds. Soldiers poured from its belly, more disciplined than the ones before. Their armor bore a different mark, one that even Lyra recognized instantly. She stiffened in fury. The Dominion, she spat. They are the hand behind this. The soldiers spread in formation, weapons glowing with deadly power. At their front walked a tall figure draped in crimson armor, his face hidden behind a helm of polished steel. Unlike the others, he carried no weapon. His very presence radiated control. The soldiers moved only when he moved, like extensions of his will. He stopped at the edge of the valley, looking directly at Kale. His voice carried across the mist, sharp and commanding. Human, you should not be here. You trespass in matters far beyond your kind. Kale did not answer. The broodmother growled low, restless under his whisper. The armored figure raised his hand. This creature is ours. You may think you hold it, but you are nothing more than a spark before the flame. Release it, and I may let you live. Lyra's spear trembled in her hand. She wanted to strike, but she could feel the weight of the soldiers' weapons aimed at them. She glanced at Kale, expecting anger or fear. Instead, his expression was calm as stone. You tried to chain it, Kale said finally. His voice was quiet, but every soldier heard it. You broke the seal for your war. Now it will not listen to you. The commander's helm tilted slightly. And it will not listen to you forever. Your voice is borrowed. When it breaks, this world burns. The broodmother let out a thunderous roar, shaking the sky. The beasts surrounding them stirred uneasily, caught between Kale's command and the primal call of their progenitor. Kale's whispers grew faster, his words a steady rhythm that anchored them. Lyra stepped closer to him, her eyes fixed on the enemy commander. If they are Dominion, they will not stop until you are broken, she warned. They will send armies, fleets, anything it takes. Kyle nodded once. Then we must end it before they can. The commander's voice cut through again. End it? You cannot even stand against what you control. When your strength fails, I will claim it, and with it, every world will kneel." His soldiers readied their weapons. The beasts growled in answer. The valley teetered on the edge of war, greater than any Lyra had known. Kale's hand rested on the Night Fang's back, steadying himself as much as the beast. His eyes never left the commander. "Then come," he said. "Test whether your dominion can silence me." The commander lifted his hand and the valley erupted once more. The valley shook as the Dominion soldiers opened fire. Bolts of energy streaked across the mist, striking the ground in explosions of light. The freed beasts roared and charged, their glowing fangs tearing through the enemy lines. The Night Fang at Kale's side leapt forward, crashing into armored troops and sending them flying. Lyra moved with deadly precision, her spear flashing in the chaos. She struck between armor plates, her every movement honed by years of battle. But even as soldiers fell around her, she kept her eyes on Kale. He stood in the heart of the storm, his blade drawn, his whispers holding the brood mother in check. Towering creature writhed, torn between its ancient rage and the voice that bound it. Its roar drowned out the clash of weapons, venom pouring like rivers that carved the earth. The Dominion commander raised his arms as if calling the beast to him. His voice boomed across the valley. "You cannot hold it, human. You will fall, and it will be mine." Kale answered not with words but with action. He stepped forward, his whispers deepening into a sound that made the very air tremble. The broodmother stilled. Its burning eyes turned fully toward him, ignoring the commander. The Dominion soldiers faltered, unsure whether to fight the beast or flee from the power they were witnessing. The commander snarled and advanced, his armor glowing with crimson light. He moved with unnatural speed, his strikes cutting down beasts that leapt to block him. Nothing slowed his march toward Kale. Lyra rushed to intercept him, but the commander's power hurled her back like a storm wind. She hit the ground hard, her spear clattering away. Kale met the commander alone. Their blades clashed, sparks lighting the mist. The commander's strength was overwhelming, each strike heavy enough to break stone. Yet Kale's movements were calm, his blade flowing like water, redirecting power rather than meeting it head-on. The duel raged in the shadow of the broodmother, whose massive head lowered closer as though watching the outcome. At last the commander drove Kale to his knees, pressing down with his glowing sword. "This ends now," he hissed. "Your voice cannot command forever." Kale's eyes lifted, steady and unbroken. "It does not need to," he said. He whispered one final word. The broodmother roared, a sound that split the valley and shook the mountains. Venom rained from its jaws, striking the commander and his soldiers. Armor melted, weapons disintegrated, screams filled the air. The Dominion lines broke in terror as their leader was consumed, his body dissolving under the fury of the beast he had tried to claim. When the dust cleared, silence fell once more. The soldiers were gone, their machines destroyed. Only Kale, Lyra, and the beasts remained. The broodmother lowered its massive head until its glowing eyes were level with Kale. The earth trembled as it bowed, not in submission, but in respect. Then it turned and vanished into the mist, its brood following in silence. Lyra struggled to her feet, her body aching but her spirit alive. She looked at Kyle, who still stood with his blade in hand, calm as ever. "You are not just a man," she said quietly. "You are something my people will speak of for generations." Kale sheathed his blade. His eyes were tired yet steady. "I am only a man," he replied. "But sometimes that is enough." The Night Fang returned to his side, its massive form lowering gently beside him. Lyra walked closer, her gaze softening. For the first time she allowed herself to smile. "Then perhaps this world has found its guardian." The mist rolled across the valley, covering the scars of war. The beasts were gone, the enemy defeated, but the memory of what had happened would remain. One human had walked into a cursed forest and left as the master of legends. Kale looked to the horizon where the stars burned above. His journey was not over, but Velan was no longer a world of fear. It was his, and hers, and the beasts that had once been chained. Together they would face whatever came next. And in that silence, Lyra knew the galaxy had changed forever.